Welcome to the Political Bridge. I'm Ada, your host. Today, we're tackling big questions about how our country is run. We're talking about the very structure of our government. Specifically, we'll discuss if we should abolish the Senate and how we might reform the presidency. These ideas sound radical to some. Others see them as vital steps for a modern democracy. Our system of checks and balances was set up a long time ago. The framers wanted to prevent too much power in one place. But has it kept up with today's challenges? We'll explore arguments for and against these major changes. We'll hear how they could affect your daily life. Let's dive into this important debate about the future of U.S. governance.
The idea of abolishing the Senate or drastically changing the presidency is dangerous. It ignores why these parts of our government exist. The Senate protects smaller states. It ensures their voices are heard, not just the voices of big states like California. Without the Senate, states with fewer people would have almost no say in national laws. This would lead to a tyranny of the majority. The founders created the Senate for careful debate. It cools down hasty decisions from the House. It stops rapid, emotional changes in law. Reforming the presidency too much could weaken its ability to act fast when needed. A strong executive is crucial for national security and quick action in crises. We need to respect the original design. It has kept our republic stable for centuries. We should not dismantle it based on temporary political frustrations.
Our current system, especially the Senate, no longer serves the people fairly. It's time for real change. The Senate gives too much power to states with small populations. For example, a person in Wyoming has far more voting power than someone in California. This isn't fair representation. It means that a minority of voters can block laws supported by most Americans. Things like universal health care or gun control, with broad public support, get stuck. This makes our government less responsive. Reforming the presidency is also vital. We've seen how much power a president can gather. This can hurt our democracy if not checked. We need to ensure the presidency serves all people, not just one person's agenda. We must update our government for the 21st century. The future of U.S. governance depends on it.
Nico, you argue for preserving the Senate's role in protecting smaller states and ensuring careful deliberation. Jordan, you highlight the unfair representation in the Senate and the need for a more responsive government. My first question for both of you is this: how do you balance the need for stability and protection of minority interests with the principle of equal representation for all citizens? It seems there's a tension between these two important goals. Nico, let's start with you.
The balance lies in our federal system itself. The House of Representatives gives power based on population. That's where the majority rules. The Senate balances this with equal state representation. This ensures that states like Delaware or Montana have a voice. They are not overshadowed by states like New York or Texas. This structure prevents a few large urban areas from dictating policy for everyone. It forces broader compromise across different regions. It also means senators serve longer terms, 6 years. This allows for more thoughtful decisions. They can look beyond short-term public opinion. This stability is a feature, not a flaw. It protects against sudden shifts in policy. It keeps our laws steady. This protects everyone, even those in the minority.
Nico, while stability is good, it shouldn't come at the cost of fairness. The current Senate system means a small group of people can stop progress. This happens even if most Americans want a certain law. For example, 41 senators from the smallest states can block bills. They represent a very small part of the country's population. This is not protecting minority interests. It's allowing a minority to control the majority. It creates gridlock. It makes our government unable to solve big problems. We need a system where every person's vote counts equally. This is a basic idea of democracy. We can still have checks and balances. We can have a system that is fair and responsive. We can do this without giving a few states too much power.
Nico, you stated that reforming the presidency too much could weaken its ability to act fast in crises. However, some argue that recent presidents have expanded their power too much. This has led to unilateral actions that bypass Congress. How do you reconcile your call for a strong executive with concerns about potential overreach and the erosion of checks and balances? Jordan, you argued that the Senate's structure leads to gridlock and blocks popular legislation. But critics of abolishing the Senate say it would remove a vital check on the House of Representatives. They say it would lead to hasty laws and a tyranny of the majority. How do you address this concern that a single legislative body could become too powerful?
Ada, presidential power is indeed a complex issue. The Constitution gives the president specific powers. These are needed for leadership, especially in emergencies. Think about times of war or natural disaster. Quick, decisive action is often vital. Yes, there are concerns about overreach, but the system has built-in checks. Congress can still override vetoes. The courts can review presidential actions. The problem isn't the office itself. It's sometimes how individuals use it. We need to elect leaders who respect limits. We don't need to dismantle the office. Reforming the presidency means strengthening these existing checks. It does not mean weakening its core functions. We need a president who can lead. We also need one who respects the rule of law. This is the balance we must keep.
Ada, the fear of a single, powerful legislative body, is understandable. But the House of Representatives already has many members. It represents diverse views from across the country. We could even expand its size for better representation. This would make it harder for any single faction to dominate. Also, we still have the judicial branch. It can strike down unconstitutional laws. The president would also still have veto power. These are strong checks. Abolishing the Senate would remove a bottleneck. It would allow laws supported by the majority to pass. This would make our government more efficient. It would be more responsive to the people's needs. It's about empowering the majority. It's not about creating a new tyranny. It's about making democracy work better for everyone.
This stress test reveals the core tension in this debate. Nico, your argument for a strong executive relies on the idea that existing checks are sufficient. Yet, many point to recent history and argue those checks have proven weak against a determined president. Jordan, your vision of a more responsive House still faces the challenge of ensuring minority voices are heard. Without the Senate's equal state representation, how do we prevent the concerns of less populated areas from being ignored by a larger, population-based legislative body? These are not easy questions, and they get to the heart of what kind of government best serves a diverse nation.
The strength of our checks and balances is in their design. They are meant to be tested. The legislative, executive, and judicial branches each have distinct powers. They can limit the others. If a president oversteps, Congress can act, the courts can act. The issue isn't the system's weakness. It's sometimes a lack of political will to use those checks. We need to elect representatives who will uphold their duties. We need them to defend the Constitution. Reforming the presidency should focus on strengthening the character of leadership. It should also focus on the resolve of other branches. It should not be about dismantling the tools needed for effective governance. A stable government requires a strong yet accountable executive. This is vital for our nation's future.
Nico, relying on political will alone, has clearly fallen short. We need structural changes. As for minority voices, we can address this without the current Senate. We could create a different kind of upper house. It could represent regions or ideas, not just states. Or we could expand the House dramatically. This would make districts smaller and more local. It would give more people direct access to their representatives. We could also use proportional representation in elections. This ensures smaller groups get a fair share of seats. The goal is to make every vote count. It is to make every person feel heard. The current Senate does not do this. It creates an unfair system. It allows a few to block the many. This is not true democracy. We need a system that truly reflects all Americans.
Jordan, while I appreciate the desire for structural changes, we must consider the unintended consequences of drastically altering foundational elements like the Senate. Take the filibuster, for instance. It's often criticized for causing gridlock, but it also serves as a crucial mechanism for protecting minority rights and forcing broader consensus. Without it, a simple majority in the Senate could push through legislation that deeply impacts a significant portion of the population, even if that population is concentrated in fewer states. Historically, the filibuster has been used to block legislation, including civil rights bills, which is certainly a stain on its history. However, it has also prevented hasty decisions and allowed for more thorough debate on complex issues. Abolishing it entirely could lead to a tyranny of the majority, where the voices of less populated states are completely drowned out and their interests ignored in favor of those of a few large states. This isn't about protecting a minority from progress, but ensuring that all diverse interests across our vast nation are genuinely considered in the legislative process.
Nico, the filibuster in its current form, has become an instrument of obstruction, not thoughtful deliberation. It allows a minority of senators, representing a very small percentage of the U.S. population, to block legislation supported by the vast majority of Americans. We've seen this repeatedly, with critical issues like voting rights, gun control, and climate policies stalled despite broad public support. The argument that it protects minority rights often translates to protecting the ability of a partisan minority to thwart the will of the people. This leads to legislative gridlock and forces presidents to increasingly rely on executive orders, which are less stable and can be easily reversed by subsequent administrations, creating policy whiplash. If the Senate truly aimed for consensus, it wouldn't require 60 votes to even bring a bill to the floor, effectively making supermajority rule the norm for most legislation. We need a system where legislation can pass with majority support, reflecting the democratic principle of one person, one vote, while still allowing for robust debate, perhaps through reforms that require actual sustained debate rather than just a threat to filibuster.
Our discussion today has truly highlighted the complex trade-offs involved in reforming our government. We've heard compelling arguments for both preserving our foundational institutions and for making bold changes to better reflect a modern, diverse America. The tension between stability and fairness, and between executive power and legislative checks, is clearly at the heart of the debate about the future of U.S. governance. It's a conversation that requires careful thought and an understanding of different perspectives. You can find more information and resources at tpbridgepod.com. Join us next time for another engaging discussion. Until then, stay informed, stay engaged, and keep bridging those political divides.